sir, what is the difference between wisdom and intellect? Now, see, there are several terms used in the English language, like the brain, the mind, intellect, intelligence, intuition, and so on and so forth. These are all terms which are used as a translation for some terms. In fact, most of the texts, some translated texts use this term intellect for buddhi. They make a differentiation between mind and intellect. And if you go by the scriptural description, mind is analytical. Mind talks about sankalpa and vikalpa, about doubts and options. So the activity of the mind is said to be based on this aspect of alternatives, opposites, indecision and doubts. This is considered to be the faculty, to be considered to be the aspects of the mind. Discrimination and decision making are considered as aspects of buddhi, and buddhi is sometimes translated as intellect. The word intellect, many texts you can find, the Sanskrit term buddhi has been translated as intellect. So wisdom is above these two. Wisdom is beyond the mind and the buddhi. It is transcendental in nature, and it is a dynamic state of consciousness, as I mentioned. It includes discrimination and decision making, which is an aspect of the intellect. It also includes the aspects of the mind. So wisdom is much more comprehensive and all-inclusive, and it is focused on the aspects or the facets which I have mentioned. In this sense, wisdom per se does not mean anything. Wisdom has to find an expression. Somebody cannot claim that he is wise and abuse somebody or behave in an erratic manner. Wisdom means you always demonstrate in action through an outpouring of compassion and love, through strictly abiding by the spiritual and natural laws, constantly being aware of what is true and what is untrue, what is real and what is not real, and being always in a state which does not disturb your inner peace. So that is why I have called these as the four facets of wisdom. All these together is what is called as wisdom, which is a dynamic state of being. From there, whenever you are acting, it will always be the right action. There is no question of you are making an error of judgment or an error of word or action or thought. There is absolutely no possibility when you are operating that from that prajna. The term used is prajna. So we can say buddhi is intellect in one sense, from the general point of view, and prajna is wisdom. So I am using, just for the sake of understanding, two Sanskrit words, prajna and buddhi, in place of wisdom and intellect. Hope the point is clear to Mr. Subbarao. Now, Janaki Ramji says, very well codified. Yeah, thank you, Janaki Ramji. And there is another thing, says Sarji, how to hold that dynamic state of consciousness in the present for a long time with all distractions all around. It is a big problem to a practitioner. Now, you are asking me, who is also in the same state. See, one thing, sir, it is not a question of holding on to that state. as I mentioned in the beginning itself, you can't hold on to it. You have to approach it in a fresh manner. Do not allow the mind to interfere in this process, because the disturbance, the source of disturbance is the mind. The quietude of the mind, the silence of the mind is an invitation to that dynamic state of consciousness. Both cannot simultaneously exist. So whenever you are disturbed, you have to go back to it. You have to silence it and go back to it. You have to constantly grapple with this problem. Nobody said that this is an easy thing to achieve. It is something which has to be deeply understood. Once you understand the source of disturbance, the source of disturbance is the me. The source of disturbance is the thought. The source of disturbance is this duality. The source of disturbance is this constant craving for things, constant craving for relationships, constant craving for fulfillment of desires. Do we actually see it? When we actually see this, then automatically what happens is, you will know what is real, what is to be done in that situation. It is the quietude of the mind that is important. That, as I said, is a true invitation to that dawning or descending of wisdom. This is definitely a very difficult problem, not an easy problem at all, and not something which can be, just got like that, and we can't come to that state unless we have deeply understood what is the present state, unless we have deeply experienced the state of our own being as of now, which is totally disturbed. So that's why they call it as observing without the observer. And there is some other gentleman, Mr. S.V.R. Shetty, says, is experience a necessity for being wise? Wisdom equivalent to knowledge. Experience, sir, you have to pardon me, because I am forced to use words like experience. Now, the word experience presupposes the presence of an experiencer. This is a very problematic thing. Normally, our present level of state of consciousness is, I experience something. The emphasis is more on the I than the experience. That will create a problem. That will create the craving, that will create the desire, that will create everything. So suppose one is eating something which is very tasty. Now, instead of actually and fully experiencing it, immediately a kind of pleasurable sense of being and thought comes that I am experiencing something very good. The moment the I am experiencing something very good comes into picture, this I wants more and more of it and is no longer interested in that experience. It is replaced by the craving for more than actually undergoing the experience. So kindly don't hold on to this word experience. It is a state of being. It is something deep within you, which you can call it as a feeling, a sense of being. So experience is only a word, sir. My humble request, as I mentioned earlier also, is let's not hold on to words. I am using some words with a specific meaning just to convey a message. And I have no other option. I have no choice but to use words which are mutually understood by each other. So that's why I have said experience. But experience, when you talk about experience, there should not be an experiencer. Now, can such a state be there where there is no experiencer? Therefore, what happens? only the experience remains. So that is what I am calling it as wisdom. Wherever there is an experiencer, the experiencer will immediately convert that experience into knowledge. And that knowledge is stored in memory. So the importance of the experience is lost now, because it has been converted into something else. So that is the word, that is the meaning and the sense in which I have used this term experiencer. Kindly understand, Mr. Shetty, kindly understand it in that way. Don't hold on to that word experience. It is a sense of being. Hope I am clear. Gulu Advani ji, thank you so much, sir. And Subbarao sir says, sir, can an intelligent and knowledgeable person be called to be endowed with wisdom? Now, whom do you call as, what do you mean by intelligence? See, for one thing I can very clearly say, that a knowledgeable person cannot be a wise person. A knowledgeable person will be only a knowledgeable person, that's all. In fact, knowledge is a hindrance to wisdom. Now, what is the sense in which you are using the term intelligence is more important. Intelligence, from my perspective, I will use that adjective called supreme also. And when I am saying supreme intelligence, I am relating it to the Sanskrit term called prajna. And prajna in the scripture is equivalent to Brahman. Prajnanam Brahma is from the Aitareya Upanishad of the Rigveda. So in that sense, I am using it as a transcendental state of being, beyond the mind, beyond duality, and referring to that prajna, which is supreme intelligence. If you are talking about that supreme intelligence, then that is what you can relate it to wisdom. But when you are talking about knowledge, which is mundane in nature, which is acquired by the senses from the objective world around us, and such a knowledge is something which is stored and which is the past, and therefore a knowledgeable person cannot be termed as a wise person. That's why the scriptures also very clearly say there are two vidyas, dve vidye veditavye paracha aparachaiva. There are two vidyas, not knowledge or systems of practice. There are two aspects of vidya. Vidya is that which truly liberates you. Sa vidya ya vimuktaye is the term. I'll not go in much into this, but basically you have to understand that there is a apara vidya. Apara vidya means worldly knowledge. Then there is a paravidya, which is otherworldly and beyond the world and transcendental. And all the Vedas and Vedangas are also called as aparavidya only. The Upanishad itself says everything else is aparavidya, except that supreme intelligence of Brahman. Everything else other than that is aparavidya only. Now there is another question. There is a thank you, Praveen ji, for your comment. And then Beena ji says, the origin of the word wisdom, you said, is Ved or Vedas in our tradition. Did the Westerners know about the Vedas, that they based their word on that? You have taken the common usage of the word to a level that means so much more. Yeah, above message. Yeah, that is true, sir. Actually, Veda is something which is very ancient, and that's why the Indo-European language root. Proto means prior to the actual origin of the other language, Indo-European languages. So at that time, generally some of the linguists and others accept that there was only one culture or one widespread access to knowledge, or what we call as Veda, across continents and across civilizations. And that is how it is taken up. So that is how we have that root has come, and basically the origin is from there. Even the word Veda comes from that Proto-Indo-European language root called Ved. So it means much more. As you rightly said, it means much more. And then EKM, EAR, EPC code are all pointers for diving deep into oneself to find truth. Yes, sir. Experience, knowledge, memory is one thing. Experience, awareness, and reality is the other thing. And code is what I have given. What exactly I am unable to decipher EPC. EPC, I think, is some other term which is used in some context. Yeah, these are all aspects which we have to hold in our consciousness and delve very deep into it, very deep into it. So unless we do that, we can't come to that. I can't loosely use the term compassion, or I can't loosely use the word discrimination just like that and think that I have understood them. You have to delve very deeply into it in order to understand that. And you are right, sir. That's true. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Experience, purity, and clarity.
Yeah. What is that, sir? Purity?
Purity and clarity.
Experience, sir?
Experience.
Purity and clarity. Yeah. Okay. So experience, purity, and clarity. So all experiences should lead to that. All experiences. One type of experience leads to knowledge and memory. Another type of experience leads to awareness and reality. And the third type of experience leads to purity and clarity. Thank you so much, sir. What you have said is true. And I think I have used these terms in some other context. And thanks for reminding us. And that's very good. And I think we have already exceeded our 1 hour time. And I hope there are no more questions. See, what happens is one kind request which I want to make to everybody is that these are some of the subjects in which very few are seriously interested, because they are not like some discourse. We are all students sailing in the same boat, and I am no better than any of you in any manner, because it applies to me also equally. And I am also in the same thing, as I mentioned earlier, I am also in the same state of struggling with several aspects of life. But I am just trying to present some aspects of my own study. And this particular topic which I have taken, I had written a lot of notes on this subject way back in 2013. Somewhere in December 2013 is what I have jotted down and noted several aspects which I have mentioned, especially this code. And I have another aspect also on approaches to wisdom. And if next Friday or whenever we get an opportunity, we can delve much deeply into the various approaches to wisdom also. But I request all the participants to maybe spend time and go into oneself deeply, because that's where we can begin. I can only begin with myself. I cannot begin with the world outside. I cannot begin elsewhere. I'd only begin with myself here and now, and that's the only place to start with. And that's why the Veda, generally we hear the term called Ayam Muhurta Sumuhurtaha. This time, this present Muhurta is the best Muhurta. That means this time is the present time, and the present state of being in whichever state we are is the best state to start deep contemplation on these aspects. And as I have mentioned, most of the matter is not mine. I have only given it a structure through my understanding, but I have derived all these things from different sources. And I would like, as I mentioned, if you can get hold of that book called Thoughts for Aspirants. That's a very beautiful book. Though it is more than 50 years old, it is much more relevant from our point of view, because it points out to various aspects of this wisdom. So thank you so much.
Saji, who is the author of the book?
N. Sriram. The Theosophical books, one of the Theosophical literature. N. Sriram was a past president of the Theosophical Society. He passed away in 1973, if I am not wrong. So this I think is a collection of his talks given at various places and called as the Thoughts for Aspirants. You can get this from the Theosophical Publishing House.
Thank you, sir.
And you have a good center in Bangalore also. There also, I think there is a bookshop. You can get them in Bangalore also.
Thank you, sir.
Some of you are there. So thank you so much. Any more questions or any more discussion? I think that's that.
Thank you. Thank you
so much to all the participants.
Thank you so much, Krishnapani ji.
I think I should thank all of you and Rutambara in particular and all the participants here, because when you asked me for some subjects for talks, you are forcing me to go back and bring those things and read them once again, read my own notes. And then that's a good exercise for me, and I am so thankful to all of you for giving me an opportunity to do some recapitulation and getting back to my own, we tend to forget, even though I have noted down these things, it was it's almost 6.5 years or 7 years, and one tends to forget. And it's a good opportunity. You have all given me an opportunity to go back and refer some of my old notes. I'm so thankful to all of you.
Thank you so much. We get immensely benefited by your going back and referring to all your notes. So thank you so much. Next week, we have 3 great programs for you. Rutambara Wellness will be celebrating International Yoga Day on the 21st. So 21st of this month, 7 a.m. we have a special session by Shri Umesh Dagatji, and the details of that have been posted on the groups that we have. So please, log in and please be there for that session. On the 23rd May, Tuesday at 7 p.m., we have the second webinar of Dr. Sangeeta Balaprakash, who's going to be talking to us on Ayurveda wellness, food, sleep, and lifestyle. So we've already finished one session with her. I'd request you, if you haven't actually participated in that particular webinar, to go back to our groups. We have uploaded the recording. Please go through that so that you can get continuity for the balance 2 and 3 sessions that we're going to be having on Ayurveda wellness. And on Friday 26th, we have Shri Ishwaranji, who's going to be talking to us. Details will be sent to you later. But we are going to be starting this particular program at 5:30 in the evening and finishing at 6:30. So please note the time, and I will make a special mention of that when I upload this particular flyer for this particular program. So thank you again, all of you, for your presence and participation from all of us at Rutambara, and we look forward to your presence this week on Sunday for the yoga on 21st June, and thereafter on the 23rd of May, and then on the 26th. Thank you so much.